and today we're at Chef Arun Kumar's house to discuss his newly launched book, Feast on a Leaf. And it's all about Onam and the Sadhya.
Today we are going to make a dish called olan. It's one of the simplest dishes because when you have a look, the process is very, very short and simple. And it uses ashcode, white pumpkin, which is easily available in Kerala, especially during Onam, because soon after the harvest you have a lot of gourds growing in your backyard. We start off with a little oil. Normally we would prefer coconut oil, but I'm using refined oil. And we just saute a green chili. Okay? And now we add the pumpkin, which has been sliced very thin. Leave it on a low flame. It'll take about 10 minutes for the pumpkin to cook. Now, this is a dish which I think has a little controversy in terms of there are people who say Olan was made after the Portuguese had come and the Syrian Christians had set up in Kerala, and they were making something called the stew. Now the stew also uses the process of kind of infusing your vegetables with green chili and ginger. Now we are not using ginger here; we are using green chili, and my reading is that I think a long, long time before the Portuguese came, we actually were making the olan. And what the Portuguese actually did, or the Syrian Christians, was to adapt that process into the stew. And the stew, then they added also vegetables, which we as Nairs in Kerala had never seen also. It's like carrots, or they would add beans, they would add peas, and to be able to get a kind of a tricolor stew. And so I would, and the olan, because it's a very important dish in the sadya, because it is one of those dishes which also, as soon as it's served, you would find connoisseurs kind of quickly taking a lick of the olan, because that kind of gives them an idea of how good the sadya is or not. So basically, the only ingredients used here are the white pumpkin, which are sliced very thin. There's green chili, and we use coconut milk. Apart from that, it's just curry leaves, which is used as a garnish. We just leave it in it for a while so that it gets infused into the curry.
So, Chef, how long have you been a chef and what's been your journey like to become a chef?
Okay, it's actually been a fairly long journey and actually many hats. I started off as a journalist. That was my first kind of professional career soon after graduating. And I was with Times of India I became part of Film Fair, and then I became their film critic. That got me interested in cinema. So from there, I took my first jump, and I just jumped straight into a feature film. All through this process of filmmaking, uh, I used to do a certain amount of cooking. And cooking was like a stress buster for me. So when we were on location and we were shooting after a full day's shoot, I would come back and look for a kitchen somewhere and cook something for the entire unit. So this went on, and then I started doing elaborate cooking at home because with my travels, I was being exposed to more and more food. I would come back, try it out, and started doing that. And then we'd have big parties at home, and food must have been good because all my friends then would keep pushing me and saying, oh, you must just start a restaurant, or you must do this, you must do that. And actually, then two of my friends and my wife got me started on pop-ups. They were definitely the first pop-ups in Delhi. It was a new kind of concept. And we used friends who had big houses and big lawns. So in winter, we started these pop-ups in the afternoon. And I was concentrating on the Deccan, basically the 4 states of the south. And the food went down very well, and people started noticing it. And it was around that time that, I mean, uh, I can say it also because there's nothing wrong. Veer Sangh, we had also eaten at one of the pop-ups. He told me that there was somebody looking for a chef professionally, so would you like to take it up? Uh, I said, I'll think about it. So while I was waiting for this call, at the same time, somebody like Ritu Dalmia kept telling me, you know, you can't keep walking the fence. She said, either you keep making films or you jump the side and join us for cooking. Rest is history. I became the brand chef of Zambar, and that went on for a couple of years. And then I found that definitely there was a certain amount of pressure being the brand chef of the restaurant to be able to in your returns to be able to be above the black line by a certain amount and things. That was too much of a pressure, and I was getting quite irritated and not happy. And they were opening too many outlets. And I would always say, Zambar is a concept for just about 30, 40 people, small niche one, and just leave it at that and give it time. So anyway, I quit that job and started catering. And now I've owned the next hat is that I wrote a book.
And this is your first book. So,
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
why did you decide to do a book on the Onam Sadhya?
Okay. Uh, Actually, I'd started writing another book,
Okay.
which had nothing to do with Onam. And I'd written a couple of chapters. I was trying something different. I was trying to mix fiction with food and recipes. So anyway, the couple of my friends saw it, a couple of publishers also, and they said, they were not too sure whether they could take a chance with this kind of a format. So then Krishan Chopra at Bloomsbury, he said, why don't you do something on Kerala? So I said, okay, I've had worked a little concept on Onam. I said, I'll send it to you, you have a look. So actually what struck him immediately was the title, because I already had the title, which is Feast on a Leaf. And he said, no, you write a little more, write one more chapter. And then there it was. It's here now, and unbelievable, but actually has happened, yeah.
So, the sort of subhead says the Onam Sadhya cookbook, but it's so much more than just a cookbook. There is a lot of it's a retelling of what Onam means, but from your perspective. It's a very personal sort of history of Onam. Was that how you wanted to go into it?
I've seen a lot of cookbooks, and I've found the cookbooks which have some kind of story tend to be more interesting. Otherwise, you take a cookbook just for a recipe.
Yeah.
I have so many cookbooks, I want to check on something, I just open, that's it. The book doesn't mean very much after that. Also, I'd found that during my restaurant days, catering, things like that, people were very fascinated when you gave them some kind of background to the dish you had cooked or the kind of cuisine you had cooked. And Onam was quite an important part in our lives. I mean, I come from a Tarawad in central Kerala. And we had 2 Taravads on both my mother's side, father's side. Holidays we had spent at the Taravad. We had number of sadhyas, uh, and there were lots of things that, as children, we had seen, but actually not kind of recorded. So I had started this process with my mother while she was alive. I wanted her to tell me more about the Taravad. She had told me a little bit, but by then it was too late. Later, I followed it up with one of my aunts. So I was able to piece together what I had in bits and pieces. I mean, as a child, having gone there, images of certain things that I did. It's like, going out into plucking fruit or, going to the kitchen or, things like that. but I could bring it all together by, talking to some of my elders and figuring out what the, entire picture was. So I just felt it's nice to share a personal story. And also, there is nothing which is concrete on Onam which is available. I mean, because I looked a lot to figure out. I would just find an article, I would find a couple of recipes, but nothing which actually kind of explained, what was the festival and why, how is it different in different parts and why did it change the way it did. And I just had too much information and too many Onams.
Yeah.
So then I decided I better stick to my Tarawad and the Onam celebrated there,
Yeah.
because it is an important part of Kerala.
Yeah.
So that is why. So people who say, oh, my Onam is not like this, fully agree with them. This just happens to be my Onam.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
I feel like the approach that you've taken is a better approach than saying this is the Onam.
Yeah, yeah. It's very difficult to
Yeah.
do that because, like you yourself would know, it's different. And ever since Onam became a kind of state festival where everyone celebrates it. So, for the Hindus, it's different. For the Christians, it's different. For the Muslims, it's different. But they all celebrate it. And they all on that day have a sadhya.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's very nice.
Yeah.
I think it is.
I think, yeah, Onam as a festival is so different to different people, not just the food, but from the myth of Mahabali itself or the story and how people view it. Like in your book, Mahabali is the sort of demon king and Vishnu is the god. In the retelling that I've always heard or I've always grown up with, Mahabali is sort of the hero. And Vishnu, who comes in, is the villain who sends him away. And Mahabali coming back is such a great thing because it's
I
coming
think
back
this,
of a
yeah, it was a part of, I think, this whole reinterpretation of what comes from the Puranas. It is there. I went back to it. I met a couple of people who had translated the Puranas, and I tried to figure out where did this kind of thing take place. And actually, neither was Mahabali a villain, nor was Vishnu a villain. Actually, Mahabali was not Mahabali; he was a Raja Bali, but a very, very good king, and people were very happy. But he did have a very strong ego, and he was quite this thing. And when he started becoming too powerful, as per the Puranas, is when they send Vishnu as a troubleshooter for everything. So there he comes as a dwarf, and it's not tricking him. It's actually Mahabali, if you read the Puranas, actually tells Vishnu that, you place your foot, push, send me. But the only request, which is again controversial, he seems to have said is, let me come, and that is not there in the Puranas. But also the fact that he's not pushed all the way down to the bottom.
Okay.
He's actually somewhere in between. And Vishnu makes him the king of that place.
Okay.
So it is different. But the thing is, earlier Onam for us, we worshipped Vishnu, and we would still go to the temple and all that for Vishnu. And now it is, I mean, Mahabali takes center stage. What I think is important today is that it's a festival which cuts across everything. So, no need to, the person who wants to go to the temple can do it. The one who wants to go and see Mahabali can go and do it. It's great. It's nice. Yeah.
And the another thing about the book are the pictures in the book. And you worked with a photographer for it. So how was that process? Because a lot of the dishes in an Onam Sadhya are not always the most photogenic dishes. Was that a challenge?
Yes, it was a challenge, and two things. There was Dinesh Khanna, who's a photographer, who's brilliant, had earlier worked with me at my restaurant. And at that time, when he had interacted, both of us knew we wanted to do food in a different way, not the standard way. So when it came to the Onam Sadhya, I mean, we talked about it a lot. I was very clear in my mind that I will not do the kind of photography that you normally do for food, where you half cook stuff and you kind of prop it up and, do that. I told Dinesh also that's not what I want. I want it to be more natural and actually in a setting which is more open and thing. So that's how we came up with doing it all on a banana leaf. And the cover is set against water, which took us a couple of days to be able to, get a whole sadhya against a water background. So that, I told Dinesh also, if you get it right and if the food is right, it's cooked well, it should look appetizing. So I think he's done a wonderful job.
A lot of action shots of like things being poured and
So this, it's great. I think when I always say when two creative people get to it. So food where chef is creating something, photographer who's able to see it in a different way. When they come together, you get good results. So Dinesh has a big part to play in it. Yeah.
So another thing that you talk about in the book is the sort of authenticity of how you make a sadhya. Like you're very particular about the way you did it in Zabbar. It was a traditional sort of Nair sadhya. No carrot in avial is one key thing. But do you think, striving for authenticity in food is sometimes a lost cause?
Yeah, it's not really, I'm not really talking about authentic to the sense that it is what was done in my Tarawad.
Yeah.
I agree with you, authenticity is, it's actually, you can't get to it. You can't say which dish was cooked at what time the first time and how was it cooked. Food will evolve. You can take something back as close to the original, but somewhere along the way there are certain things which have changed. So that is part of the dish. So for me, authenticity was as far as my Tarawad is concerned. In fact, even if you go to another Nair Tarawad, they may say, oh, but we don't make the avial this way. So that's why I was very clear that this is what I do, and this is a sadhya that I've served thousands of people. So that is.
Are there any sort of non-traditional ways you like to eat your sadhya, like non-traditional additions to your sadhya, or like are you very particular on this is how it should be?
No. So what I've done in the book is also I said that listen, not everybody can put out a sadhya. It's not easy. I mean, it takes a lot, and the logistics involved are massive. So I decided I wanted to figure out, suppose there are two people dating. I mean, you've called somebody over and you want to give a meal which is like a sadhya. It's simple. I've made it simpler and said you can do this. And I've said you can serve the sadhya as a buffet also. But to make it feel like a sadhya, just add a couple of things. Suppose it's like a theme party. People wear a munda, or the women come in a traditional sari. It just gives that feel, and then your dishes are from the sadhya. So you can do that also. And if you really want to go ahead, I've given you the full method of doing a full sadhya. But I think there's nothing wrong in trying to say, okay, I'm going to put it in casseroles and have a sadhya. We packed sadhyas from the restaurant and sent. So obviously it is.
And you also touch upon a vegan sadhya.
Yes, that's right. So vegan mainly because, I'm not a great fan of this vegan trend. And I think a lot of it, there are some people who are very, very, have a reason to it. But I think a lot of this gluten-free, vegan and all that has got a lot to do with, weight problems. And, it's like a solution that you go gluten-free, you're going to lose weight. You be vegan, your health will be better. Not really. So when I looked at it, and my publisher also, we are talking about the kind of menus. I said, yeah, the sadhya basically, except for 3 or 4 items, is vegan. And it's not as if in Kerala we, went around saying vegan, vegan, vegan. We just ate it and we didn't realize. Now, if some people are intolerant to dairy products, fine. I've given an option because today in the modern world, you can get things like, almond milk, and you can get oats milk, and you can get the curd also. So go ahead, you still can. And it works out not bad. It works out quite
Although for me it's a little hard to accept because I feel like the ghee is like such a primary part of the sadhya.
I think that start, the ghee, I mean, that's one thing, but you can't have it all. So,
Some sacrifices.
So it is keeping in mind certain people who'd want to be vegan. I've given the option of vegan.
It's also the same like in lots of parts of Kerala where you just can't get rid of non-veg. People have their, fish and their beef and their chicken fries with the sadhya. It's just another customization.
It is. And I think it's been quite traditional also. Like the Nairs themselves who come from further south, Trivandrum, they always have had fish in the sadhya. I mean, I know my sister-in-law comes from Trivandrum, and I know at their house also, the sadhya would have the option of non-vegetarian. So it is there. So that's why I had to be very careful and insist that this is a sadhya from my Taravat. So, I'm not denying that the other sadhyas exist. They do, and they're equally good, and a lot of it is traditional. All that it involves is tadka, I mean a sauteing of red chili and a little bit of rye, and then you put in your vegetable. And actually you don't have to add water into it, and just let it cook. It takes again just about 5 minutes for beans to cook. So torans then in a sadhya tend to, the bigger you want the sadhya, one of the easier things to do is to add a toran. So you have beans, you have cabbage, you have raw banana, you have snake gourd, you have beetroot. That itself makes 5. So that's 5 dishes along with your 5 or 6 curries. Already crosses 10. Then you have 5 or 6 accompaniments. You have 2 or 3 kinds of chips. You have the pulienji, you have the inji tail, and then you have a papad, a banana.
And you have
salt, exactly. Then the ghee and the purple comes. And then by the time you're serving, you have the rasam, you have the buttermilk and the sambar which is put. So you easily cross 20, then to 24, 25 items which are there on the thing. All torans are garnished with fresh coconut, and I think that's what makes all the difference. I am always very generous with the coconut. Grating coconut is a problem, But these days I tell a lot of people don't have to, get into that hassle. Use desiccated coconut. It works perfectly well. And the trick in this is to be able to retain the color of the beans.
I think that's a thing that a lot of people who are not from Kerala don't really understand. I think sadhya sort of been presented in one sense, and when they see other versions of it, it's like, oh, you're
But
sort
this
of
is not-
bastardizing tradition.
But I guess that one particular image does remain. It's like while I was at for Onam last year in Kerala, and the driver who was with us all through, he's mentioned in my acknowledgements also. He's from a Mopla family, and that day he said, I told him, I have the sadhya, we are having a big sadhya in the hotel. He said, no, I have to go back home because we have a sadhya. So then I asked him, I said, oh, in case you're going to be serving meat or something, I'll come there. So he said, no. He said, on that one day, they have this pure, which he called traditional. So, it's a image which is there, but like all food, everything will find transformation, and there'll be a lot of fusion. I've heard people talk about instead of a toran having gobi Manchurian, and bringing in avocado into it. I mean, it's possible, but
Ingredients wise, maybe avocado, but gobi Manchurian feels a little wrong.
So, but then it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of tradition, the way you serve a sadhya itself is so particular, from the position of the leaf to the way each sort of dish is placed. What was it like when you served it for the first time?
Yeah, I think that is a huge challenge. Even today, I think lots of people keep asking, should the tail be on the left? Should it be on the right? And do you serve the accompaniments on the left, the right, here, there? So the first sadhya which I had at Zambar was very popular, but totally chaotic, because it took me days to be able to try and explain to them that this is the way the leaf is placed. But when you think of a table and you're telling this guy, service guy, that you place the tail to the left, but what you've forgotten to tell him is the left of the person who's eating. So he's standing at a table. He puts one leaf left, right, the person sitting, but the one in front, he again puts the same way. So, it took a lot of things. Then, anyway, it was chaos. But then people said, as I've mentioned in the book, said, why don't you just cut the tail off? So there's no head, there's no tail. So I said, no, there is some kind of logic and science to this leaf and the way it is served, which I've tried explaining. And I think it fits into a certain Ayurvedic pattern also, and also in terms of textures, taste, and also this thing of, growing into a larger size. It all works. So I think there is some sense to it.
And there's also the idea of the order that you eat it in.
Yeah.
That I think in your book you say there's so many different versions. There's no real. What version do you follow?
You see, when you start, you don't have a choice. The purple and sambar, whether you like it or not, is poured into your thing. After that, I think it's a question of, my first, I would go for the lighter ones initially, which is things like the olan and the lighter torans, which you have. Then you go into the more complicated ones, which would be the things like the avial, the kutu curry, uh, TL, if it is served, that becomes again. Those are slightly more complicated tastes because there are more vegetables involved, more tastes in it. So the single ones start off first, but friends and everyone, I say, whatever is flowing out of your leaf, just finish that first. Yeah.
Do you have any combinations, or is it do you specifically look at, okay, this vegetable with like this curry with rice first, or do you combine things?
I wouldn't mix, say, an avial and an erisheri.
Okay.
I would have the erisheri separately, avial separately. I wouldn't do that. Toran could be mixed with any of the, because it really is another accompaniment to that. So I wouldn't, I would taste each one differently with a little amount of rice. And like I've said in the book, initially, of course, you taste a couple of things to figure out if the balance is okay or right. Yeah, yeah.
And the ending of a sadhya is, I think, my favorite part is the paisam.
Yeah.
And everybody's, I think, very particular about what kind of paisam they like best.
Yeah.
Which one is your favorite?
Actually, for me, always the pal paisam has been a great favorite because in my house on Thursdays, my dad used to have a puja and my mother would make pal paisam. And we were in Bangalore and we didn't have fridges those days in our house. So the pal paisam would be kept left over, and Bangalore was quite cool those days. And I would have it the next morning because it was cold and nice. So pal paisam kind of became a big favorite of mine. So whether it's pal paisam with ada or rice, it's always a favorite of mine. And next would come the brother one, I guess.
And another thing, since you're an expert here, I just want to get out a personal sort of grouse. A lot of people say a paisam is a kheer. Is it a kheer?
No. Definitely not. No, I think it's cooked in two different ways. For one thing, the kheer, even if they're talking of the milk one, which they're talking about, it's not done the way we do our pal payasam, because we spend a lot of time on that pal payasam. And in fact, if you talk about dishes which take the longest, the pal payasam is what takes the longest, because it takes a few hours. We're just letting it simmer there. And yeah, so it's nowhere near a kheer. And we don't put all those, so many nuts and things into it. So no, it's not a kheer.
Thank you so much. And another thing that I am very particular about when I eat my payasam is the way I'm eating the payasam. And I think a lot of people have very strong opinions about it. Do you put it onto the leaf or do you sip it from the cup?
Lately, lots of places they serve it to you, but if I had the option, I would eat it off the leaf.
And with
Because
the
I think
papadam with
a little bit of papadam, yes, but not mix it with the paisam,
okay.
but just have it later as just to change your taste and go to a next paisam.
So like
Yeah,
a
but I wouldn't crush papadam or anything else into
no banana.
pure.
either.
No, no, no.
I'm a big fan of having a little bit of achar with it.
Oh, okay. Each to like in Trivandrum, we went to a restaurant just last month where they serve a sadya uh, every day of the week, and there the famous thing, which is later I found in Trivandrum, is they serve a boli and pour paisam.
Yeah, Boli and Palada, I think, is a. We have a place. So my parents live in Dubai, and I've lived there for most of my life. There's a place that serves a palada payasam softie.
Oh, interesting.
Lovely.
See, because the basic taste of the paisam is so good.
Yeah.
So you put it, you mix
In
it right, you mix it right, you get something good.
Great. Thank you so much, Chef, for
Lovely,
speaking to
lovely
me.
talking to you.
Sweet end to end.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chef.